So hi, this is Dan from Power Station here, and I'm delighted to say that I'm going live with a very kind of random live interview with a great friend of Power Station and bank job, Nicole Skeltys in Melbourne, Australia. And we first met, Nicole, I think when you came to visit the bank back in maybe 2018, 2019, something like that, Nicole. And I don't know how you heard about bank job back in the day, but it definitely, we were vibing, weren't we? And it sort of resonated with you.
Yes, you had the Hoe Street bank there, and you had the printing press all going. And I think I read about you, somewhere worthy like The Guardian or somewhere like that. And I was just so impressed with your whole vision about taking on the international finance industry, particularly zeroing in on debt and the global crisis around debt. But more than that, you are going beyond simply representation. You're intervening in the industry itself and able to do an artwork that had a real impact on people's lives, and you succeeded. And I followed you and Hillary around like a little puppy then from that point on, and then I was down there at Canary Wharf when you blew up the debt in that van.
Yeah,
that freezing morning.
We've been great friends since that first time you popped into the bank, which must be maybe about 5 years ago, I'd say. But your work is very interesting, and today we're having a little bit of a chat about that work. So because you've gone and created a really interesting work around finance and the financialization of the city, and also maybe the financialization of the modern imagination, actually going beyond the initial, the surface level of it. Before we talk about that, though, I should just sort of introduce a bit more context about you, I feel. So you've been a musician since the late 90s in a kind of dance, like a late 90s dance scene. Was that in Australia or in England? Because you seem to have a very Anglophile lifestyle. Can you tell me a little bit about the early music and your origins into the kind of art music world?
So the dance scene, the electronic dance scene in the mid to late 90s was fantastic in the UK and around the world, I think, the developed world at least, and particularly in Australia. It was that we now refer to it as the golden years. We didn't realize at the time, but we're living through a great period of creativity and innovation. And so yeah, I had myself and another girl called Kate Crawford put together a duo called Biff Tech, and we had quite a bit of success in our own little way down here, down under. And we also got a bit of a following in Europe in a very kind of underground sort of way. Released a couple of albums. We had a brief moment of being signed to a major label, so I can tick that one off as an experience. And we toured with the Beastie Boys. We recorded with Julie Cruz of Twin Peaks fame. We did a whole bunch of festivals and was on the telly and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of petered out then about in 2003. And then I went off and did other music, all different styles. And I've been I've released about 12 albums now. But I've also done music for film and TV and theatre and good political causes as well.
Excellent. So basically you've been a dyed-in-the-wool musician for like at least 25 years, something like that. And your work has a quite strong political, ethical dimension, would you say? Could you talk a little bit about that? Maybe just in terms of the context before we get to the rock opera.
I think I've always felt a need to reflect, the contemporary social and political issues, at least in passing in my lyrics. But I guess as time has gone on, now that's one reason why I left pure dance electronica, is because I love that genre. I love the whole feeling it creates in people, but you don't necessarily get to tell a specific story. Whereas my journey as an artist has been going from a few samples and playing at protests to actually now fully embracing a whole story which has got a political intent. And I'm saying that through music and voice actors, and also visuals as well. So it's kind of like this 25-year journey, and I feel like I've arrived at it right now.
Brilliant, excellent. Feels like a good moment now to talk a little bit more about this rock opera, which I do remember you sharing when you had first come up with the idea, and I think, you know, it's a brilliant idea, and I remember that you went and researched it quite a lot as we were, you know, I think it was when we were in the bank. So you were sort of, you know, we were in the bank kind of printing money and trying to explode debt. And you, I think, were off to research this idea that you'd come up with about people who were living and working in the city. And I should basically, instead of getting it wrong and you know, being imprecise, I should let you tell us more about what this rock opera is and give it, you know, the name and the website and everything.
Well, the name of the rock opera is Canary Wharf, the rock opera. It is actually set in Canary Wharf, which is the city. And I got interested in it because of you guys, and also thanks to hanging out with you, I realized a whole bunch of other artists, and not just in London, but around the world, who are engaging with the finance industry in different ways. And I thought, well, what can I do to join this conversation? And I thought, well, I don't think anyone's done a rock opera. So I thought, well, why don't I just give that a crack? But in order to do that, I felt I need to educate myself a bit more about how people actually think, who live and work in that industry. And I also wanted to have other perspectives. So I interviewed some people who know you. I interviewed Professor Max Haven, for example. But I did find some other people who were like traders who had worked in the industry for many years, and some people who are young. They had all different perspectives on their experience there. I did interview Oliver Bullock, who's a Guardian journalist, who's produced the book a couple of years ago called Moneyland. And he's very vocal about money laundering and the Russian oligarch influence. So the more I started chatting to people, the more I realized what a rich seam it was, this whole world. But I wanted to create a insight into how people think and work there. So not just necessarily looking from the outside and saying, you know, this is all bad and wrong and it shouldn't happen. But I wanted to sort of get, like, how does it happen? What emotions do you have to have? How do you have to think and justify what you're doing in order to do the nefarious activities that some of these people get up to? And so that became the core preoccupation of this work. So it's kind of from the inside looking out.
I mean, that context is really interesting, and you know, and it sounds like you went out and you really researched it, and you met lots of people who told you lots of stuff. So how does that then translate into the storyline? Like, how close, you know, in terms of, I guess, in terms of the characters, you know, that you, because presumably, I mean, I haven't looked at the whole rock opera. I don't know if it's fully, you know, if it's a live thing that when it gets performed, and, you know, I've never seen the full thing. I've seen like a couple of what seem like kind of excerpt videos from it. I'm just wondering, like, how much of a plot there is, and what the characters are like and things like that. Could you share a bit more about that?
Well, there is an entire plot now. So it's finished as an audio work. I don't want to give too much away, except to say that there's 4 characters, and the story starts with the Big Bang, so 80s deregulation, Thatcher-driven deregulation of the finance industry in London, and it kind of follows the emotional trajectory and also the financial regulation trajectory up to the present moment. And there's a rivalry between 2 old friends, one of whom works for an investment bank, the other one is a hedge fund manager, and the jeopardy is about the shorting of a stock that is heavily invested in by the investment bank. But there's a love interest, and there's also the threat of betrayal going through it as well. So
Right,
I felt it was really important, particularly when you're dealing with music and you're trying to tell a story that engages people. In terms of what I'm doing, I felt it was really important to weave together the emotional jeopardy with the financial jeopardy. And so that all comes together and it all comes to a head at the end.
And did you write all this plot as well then? Or did you work with a writer? You just did it yourself. That's amazing. That's very brave. But
really hard.
Yeah.
But what I did work with though is I did have help understanding the understanding financial terms and what would actually happen in a specific, like shorting a stock or revving shares situation. What exactly what happened? That was beyond my experience, and I wanted to make this believable in all respects. You know, that this and everything that happens in the short 50 minutes at which it unfolds actually has happened. You know, the names have been changed to protect the guilty, you know, like that's this is how the financial markets work. This is how some of these companies work. This is how some executives think. And so I took some of the, from some of the interviews that were very graciously granted to me, I even used some of the phrases that people came up with verbatim, and I included them in the script, and I included them in the lyrics of the songs. And so, for example, the overture, the very first song that we hear is called "Trading in Air," and that is a direct phrase taken from an interview. One of the traders was saying, "Oh, it's just like we were trading in air." You know, I couldn't believe it. It was, you know, just the immateriality and also the immorality of what was going on. That was his phrase for it, and it just struck me such a wonderful phrase. So I had to use that.
And did you like basically so you wrote songs connected, so is it an opera in that kind of like that classic way where you know, people are having a chat and then all of a sudden someone bursts into song, like is that right? So shall we?
But it's not an opera though. I mean, you have it's more like I actually don't personally like traditional operas myself. So I guess if you listen to it, it sounds like the other way to hear it is it's a concept album meets a radio play. Yeah. So which is a little so sure there's a bit of histrionics in there, but it's pretty low. It's pretty low key compared to an actual opera.
Yeah.
But what I ended up doing when I realized I wanted to, because half the people are doing the voice acting, and most of the people doing the actual music, playing the music. One bunch are in London, the other bunch are in Melbourne, which makes it very challenging to then try and at this point perform it live. Actually, it makes it impossible. So what I did a few weeks ago in January, I decided I just pulled together a movie. So I've shot a whole bunch of music clips. I've shot found footage. I've got some found footage. I've got a whole bunch of photos. I've got a little bit of acting here in Melbourne, a little bit of acting in London, and I've stitched it all together. And so now we've actually got Canary Wharf, the rock opera, the movie, which is on the website, and you can watch the whole thing. So that I think it helps people. I think it's entertaining, and I think it helps people follow a very dense story. As someone who's tried to explain the finance industry to the outside world, you know how dense this is and how hard it is to make it entertaining. I think this helps a lot. And so last weekend, we showed it at a little independent cinema house here, and it was full house, and it got virtually a standing ovation. So it went down a treat, I have to say. So I think some of these things, I think the music is cracking. I do say so myself. I didn't just write, I wrote most of it, but I also collaborated with a lot of people. And I think the themes of feeling crushed and destroyed by neoliberalism resonate with people. And it's nice to see it presented in an unusual way, I guess. You know, you wouldn't expect these heavy financial economic themes to find their way into something as light as rock opera.
So just like, I'm just trying to like imagine, do the people who did the acting of the voices, are they the same people who do the singing as well, or have you just sort of given yourself that little poetic license to just bring singers in for the songs?
It's a mixture.
Cool.
It's
well,
a mixture.
I think it's probably time for you to play one of the songs.
Okay, so here we go to the challenging screen sharing moment. Here we go. Share that. There it is. That's the actual website. And so if you wanted to watch and listen to the whole opera, you can. And you can see I've explained what it's all about. But what we're going to do, we're going to go to this clip here, Trading in Air. That's the overture. Before I get to that, you can see I've broken down for easy digestion, but I felt I really needed to do this, is like at the individual scenes. It's broken down into 10 scenes, the whole work.
So are these scenes like that we're looking at here, the scene 3, scene 4, scene 5?
Yeah.
These are your actors, right?
They are scenes. So this is like the first scene. And if you go into it on the website, here's all the themes I'm exploring in that. So we mentioned Canary Wharf, we mentioned hedge funds, we talk about ethical investing, we talk about 80s Big Bang, we talk about East End boys moving into the city. And then if you click on this, it takes you to the first scene.
Okay.
So that goes for about 6 minutes. We can look at that now. Yes, that's a good thing, isn't it? So let's have a look at this. And this includes Trading in Air. This goes for about 6 minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah. And I'm
entertaining.
really intrigued.
It gives you an idea of what's in store. Okay, I'll just do a full screen share there. So here we go. Scene 1.
It's late 2019, a crowded London bar. A young black woman sits opposite a middle-aged man wearing a Burberry suit. Cambridge graduate Helen works for a think tank that pressures big financial funds to make ethical investments. She is looking to uncover some of the shadier dealings of hedge funds for her podcast. So she is surprised but excited that John, a senior broker from one of London's biggest hedge funds, has agreed to her request to meet. They talk late into the evening. The story Helen is after eludes her, but she is moved by the way John looks at her and listens so intensely. He seems like a bit of a dark horse, a surprisingly sensitive soul. They agree to meet again, so John can tell her more about Springtree Capital, his hedge fund, and its corporate culture. At least, they are both happy to pretend that that's why they want to stay in touch.
I walk back to Canary Wharf station. Standing on the deserted platform, I feel this new elation inside me. I remember a different bar, a different time. It was just after the Big Bang. My best mate David and I were toasting Thatcher's glorious deregulation of the financial markets. This beautiful woman, Ruth, walked in. We persuaded her with bottles of Moet to join us. I'd forgotten how light I felt, floating on the air of ambition and desire. The future seemed endlessly bright.
Since the 60s, news from the city has mattered to more and more people. No one makes anything here except money.
How do I explain what's invisible? But it's everywhere. How do I make an honest living when nothing is fair? How do I know that I'm normal when no one cares? No one cares. I'm just trading in air.
Big Bang, she said Thatcher. She's kicked open the door. No more controls on commissions. Foreign banks live all. A toast to good friends as computers hit the stock exchange floor. Stock exchange floor.
We're just trading in air. We're just trading in air.
Someone pointed out to me that you realise that you are literally trading fresh air. Somehow, much is fresh air. Now I get to trade air. It's one of those sort of moments where you think, this is nuts.
It's really good. Very amazing, really. Actually, like a great blend. Like the beginning bit felt to me like we were in some kind of a romantic novel of some kind. You know, it's quite it had a kind of steamy. There was a kind of steamy quality about it. It felt much, you know, that was cool. Then we kind of went into this much deeper kind of archive, really. Like, where did you get all that archive from? And you know, and I love the music. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much. That was found footage, and I do acknowledge the sources where I found it from, but only a couple of sources. I think the most adorable clips are it's an old, the really old stuff. The toppers, the bankers with their top hats heading off to ask each other for some money. You know, you've got any money today? Down at the city. So that came from a BBC doc, which is one of the very, very rare ones about the stock exchange in the early 70s. And what's it called? Anyway, it's one of those classic BBC kind of, not like Tomorrow's World, but it was something like that. And there's a bit later, there's another, I think it was ITV, it's like, what is a yuppie? And of course, yuppies have, you know, in the early 80s, they have brick phones and they wear suits and they're aspirational, you know, because they're Thatcher's children. I think so. So weaving that in with other stuff that I shot and found, yeah, it sort of seemed to fairly accurately tell the story of that time.
So what's what's next for the project? And so basically, there's an entire narrative that takes you through, that interweaves between personal lives of these characters that we met at the beginning of that film, presumably, along with the kind of the wider narrative of Thatcher, you know, deregulating the banks, allowing them to lend lots of money, the kind of explosion, if you like, of the power of the finance industry in Britain, and then the debt of everyone else, you know, which is a story that we were telling as well through Bank Job. And then how far does that go? Like what's the span of your narrative? And then also, I guess, where does the how, you know, what's next for the actual project as well, I guess is the question.
Well, so that is a DIY movie. It goes for 50 minutes and it tells the whole story. And there are 2 album versions of it. There is the full theatrical work, which includes the narration, all the voice acting, all the sound effects. In other words, the radio play meets concept album that's online at my Bandcamp site. And there's also a music only version, which includes some of the interstitial soundscape music. including one track which actually now goes for like 25 minutes, a wig out kind of noi post-rock electronica, which is
Can't just say
there
the
are
word
two different albums. They're two different albums, and
By the
then
way,
there's
you can't just say the word interstitial and think anyone's going to understand what the hell that means.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you look at a movie, when you're watching a movie, you hear all these bits of music that waft in and out, and they repeat.
Right.
That they've got emotion and they've got mood, and you may or may not notice it, but they're quite important to stitch the whole movie together.
Right. Also, what is your Bandcamp? Is this where people can buy the album?
Yes, they can, and it's my name, Nicole Skeltys Bandcamp, so that's pretty easy. It is. I have pushed all this out through the dreaded mainstream music streaming services like Spotify, Apple, etc. No artist of my stature sees assent from that. But if you wanted to do the right thing by an artist, go to their Bandcamp page, that you're more likely to get some benefit from that. So both as a consumer and as a as an artist who might actually get some real followers and some love from that. But also there's the movie, which is available on the website, Canary Wharf, therockopera.com, so you can watch the whole thing. And so I'm hoping that I can, the next stage is to make this into an actual live production. And I would love to do this as a site-specific production at Canary Wharf. So that's I would like to. I know it's a bit of a closed private city, but I'd like to give that a crack. But what stands between me and doing that at the moment is simply resources. So I need to find some grants. I need to get a producer. I need to get the whole take it to the next level. So that will be my.
You'd like to do that, have you got a venue for that in mind in Canary Wharf, or would it be?
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's that open air space there. I don't know what it's called, but there's definitely like an open air space where they do
put projections in the background as well, or I don't know, and then get your band playing live, get some singing. Like, who was that singing the song, the main song in that first chapter there? Because that had a quite British quality to it. It had a kind of indie. Also one of the the voices sounded a bit like Beck, I felt as well.
Oh, this is all high praise indeed. When I wrote that track, right here, very first track I wrote for the rock opera, I was thinking of early New Order, actually, as the kind of feeling, and I was trying to get some of those sounds in there and the hooks. So there's three different singers. One of the main singer, who is the main male singer throughout the whole rock opera, is actually a legend in his own right here, Andrew Coates from Black Cab. Please check out Black Cab if you can. They are super cool, groovy electronic post-rock band. And there is another person called Bill Garrett, who's actually happens to be my partner, but he's a bona fide Brit. And he's actually, in a previous life, he was actually a finance journalist, an investigative finance journalist. And so he's found the perfect role for himself in that. And another, the female voice, female character, Ruth, is a Melbourne-based singer called Anne-Marie Sullivan, who's just got a beautiful voice and is also stunning on screen as well. You should see her bits in the movie. They make your hair stand on end. So yeah, definitely.
Right. And what about the voiceover, like the narrator, or the two narrators? There was a female and a male narrator, and those characters seem different from. There was like two characters, and then we went to two different characters from the story. Like, so there's what was going on there actually.
So the narrator is the voice actor for that, who's also Image that you see, is Helen Adamako Young, is a young, brilliant up-and-coming actress in London. And the other voice, even though it's a British voice, Dan, he's actually my neighbour. Like he's another Melbourne musician who's been around for quite a while, incredibly talented. And he just happened to have this amazing. He's just like, oh my God, you've got the perfect voice. Have you tried voice acting? And he's like, no. And I said, well, give this a crack. And he turned out to be perfect, both in terms of the voice acting and also on screen. He's another person.
So was he just doing a British accent then? Was he just doing a British accent?
No, that he is British. He's a British expat. There's a lot of them out here.
Right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because you never know. I mean, some people have got that gift, haven't they, of just emulating accents.
True. No, he's the real deal.
He's the real McCoy. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. I think that's been really, really good. Is there anything that you'd like to say that we haven't covered in this conversation that we've just been having? Like, are there any links that you'd like to recommend people check out? And you know, any final thoughts?
Well, I just encourage people to go to Canary Wharf, therockopera.com. I'm very keen to get some feedback, any feedback really, on what people think, any suggestions for where to next. And the final thing is to say thank you so much again to all the hard work that you and Hilary have done. It was an inspiration, you know, 4 years ago, and it remains an inspiration now. I don't know where you get your energy from, but I'm so glad you do. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, and what's the if people do want to watch it and then get in touch with you, is there an email address on that website, Canary Wharf, therockopera.com? Is there an email address there for them to get in touch with you, or how should they?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. You know, it's Nicole at NicoleSkeltys.com. I'm probably the easiest person to find on the web, really.
Okay, yeah, we'll put that on the underneath, like, if we can, like the email address and things like that. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And it's a fascinating project, and I wish you all success with it, particularly with the live elements. I mean, you do basically live between England and Australia, don't you? You seem to be like very much sort of, you know, obsessed with both countries. Is that right? Is that a fair thing to say?
Well, my partner's British now, so I am we divide our time between Melbourne and the UK. So I'll be back in the UK in July. So
brilliant.
hopefully,
okay, well, hopefully we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you on Lynmouth Road in July. You know, we're doing a big we're turning the street into a kind of sunflower parade type of thing. We're growing 10,000 sunflowers at the moment, so we're going to have a big kind of party. Hopefully we'll get some solar panels up by then as well, and it'd be lovely to see you and catch up, you know, when you're in town.